The morning air in Stonevale was thick with the scent of damp earth and market stalls opening for the day. I stood at the edge of the crowd, gathered in front of the town hall, watching as the auctioneer banged his gavel on the wooden podium. Lot number 7, a parcel of land on the outskirts bordering Blackthorn Forest, includes an old well, a dilapidated barn, and a wooden cabin. Starting bid 12 copper coins. Silence. Not the kind from a lack of interest, but the heavy sort that hangs when people know something you don't. The merchants in their fine cloaks shifted uneasily, avoiding eye contact with the podium. Farmers muttered among themselves but kept their hands down. Even the scavengers who snapped up worthless plots stayed quiet. I scanned the faces hardened by years of border skirmishes and orc raids and felt the weight of their unspoken warning. No one bid. The auctioneer cleared his throat, his voice cracking slightly. 12 coppers, folks, that's all. Folks. That's going once, twice. I raised my hand. 12 coppers. Heads turned. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wind through dry grass. The gavel came down with a sharp crack. Sold to the gentleman in the back. As I pushed through to sign the papers, I caught snippets of conversation. Fools buying a curse. That place hasn't seen a soul in 15 years. Poor bastard. I ignored them. What did they know I'd seen worse than an abandoned plot in my travels? My name is Edric Vale with calloused hands, from years of wrangling horses and guarding caravans across the borderlands. Life hadn't been kind lately. A string of bad seasons, a partner who ran off with my livestock, leaving me with 2 scrawny cows, an old mare named Bess, and a handful of tools. I wasn't rich, wasn't connected, just a man tired of scraping by on odd jobs. 12 coppers for a piece of land. It was a steel curse or no curse. I figured I could fix up the cabin, dig out the well, and start fresh. Maybe raise some goats, trade with passing wagons. Anything beat sleeping in barns or under the stars. The path to the property wound through sparse woods, crossing a shallow stream before opening to an overgrown clearing. Tall grass swayed up to my knees, dotted with wildflowers and the remnants of an old fence. The cabin sat in the middle, its gray wooden walls weathered and leaning slightly, the roof sagging like an old man's shoulders. The barn was half collapsed but salvageable. The well looked intact, its stone rim cracked but sturdy. Bess snorted as I tied her to a post, her ears flicking at the quiet. I pushed the front door open with a creak. Dust motes danced in the thin shafts of light filtering through boarded windows. The air was musty, laced with the faint tang of rust, and something metallic. It didn't feel abandoned for 15 years, not entirely. A table sat askew in the center, fresh scratches marring the floorboards as if something heavy had been dragged recently. Ashes in the hearth looked no older than a month. Odd, but I shrugged it off. Squatters, maybe. I'd clear them out if needed. I stepped further in my boots, thudding on the uneven planks. That's when I looked up. Hanging from the rafters upside down like a slaughtered deer was an enormous orc woman. Her ankles were bound with thick ropes looped through an old pulley, her body dangling headfirst, long black hair brushing the floor. Leather armor hung in tatters, exposing green skin mottled with bruises and dried blood. Her arms were tied behind her back shoulders, strained at unnatural angles. A gash ran along her jawline, crusted over, and one eye was swollen shut. She was massive, easily 7 feet tall if standing, with muscles like forged iron. But what froze me in place wasn't her size. It was her eyes. They were open, staring right at me, alive with a flicker of desperate awareness. She was breathing. Shallow, ragged gasps, each one a battle. Her good eye widened as she focused on me, a mix of shock and calculation. Not the killers returning. Someone new. My heart hammered in my chest. Every instinct screamed to bolt, to leave this nightmare for someone else. But I couldn't. Not with her hanging there, blood dripping slowly from reopened wounds. I jumped onto the table, knife in hand, and slashed at the ropes. They gave way with a snap, and her weight crashed down, pulling me with her. I twisted mid-fall, cushioning her head with my shoulder to keep it from slamming the floor. Pain shot through my arm, but I ignored it. "Don't die here," I muttered more to myself than her. I cut the bonds on her wrists, draping a dusty blanket from a nearby chair over her shivering form. Grabbing my water skin, I tilted it to her cracked lips. She swallowed a few drops, coughing weakly, but it was something. Her eye fluttered, and a hoarse whisper escaped. "Danger! They'll come back." I whipped around to the door, peering through a crack in the boards. At the forest's edge, a lone rider sat motionless on horseback, silhouetted against the trees. Our eyes met for a split second before he wheeled his mount and vanished into the shadows. The whispers in town made sense now. I hadn't bought a bargain. I'd walked into a trap. I barred the door with a heavy plank, my hands steady despite the knot in my gut. The rider in the woods had seen us. If he was connected to whatever hell had left Vela hanging like that, he'd be back, and probably not alone. The cabin felt smaller now, the shadows deeper in the fading light. I struck a flint to light the hearth, the flames crackling to life and casting flickering orange across the room. The metallic tang in the air sharpened blood. I realized hers mostly smeared on the floor where she'd fallen. She lay there, this massive orc woman, her green skin pale from blood loss, her breathing like wind through cracked branches. I knelt beside her, rummaging through my saddlebag for the jar of herbal salve I'd carried since my caravan days. It wasn't much crushed yarrow and comfrey mixed with lard, but it had stopped infections on worse wounds. "Hold still," I muttered, dipping a clean rag into the warm water I'd heated over the fire. She didn't flinch as I wiped the crusted blood from her wrists, though the raw rope burns must have stung like fire. Her arms were thicker than my thighs, corded with muscle that spoke of battles I could only imagine. But right now, they trembled faintly. When I touched the gash on her shoulder, she hissed through clenched teeth, her one good eye narrowing to a slit. Tusks gleamed in the firelight, sharp and unfiled, a reminder that she wasn't human, not even close. "I'm helping," I said, keeping my voice level. She stared at me for a long moment, weighing me like a blade on a scale. Then slowly the tension eased from her frame. I bandaged what I could, wrapping strips of cloth around the worst of it. Her size made it awkward. She had to be at least 7 feet tall, her frame built for war, not fragility. But there was a vulnerability in her stillness, in the way her chest rose and fell unevenly. I handed her a tin cup of water, and she took it with hands that dwarfed mine nails, chipped and dirt-encrusted. She drank slowly, spilling a little down her chin, then set the cup aside with a rasp. "Edric," I said, breaking the silence. "My name's Edric Vale. Can you talk?" She closed her eyes briefly, gathering strength, then opened them again. "Vila." Her voice was gravel over stone, accented with the guttural roll of orcish tongues, but clear enough in the common speech. It suited her, short, strong-edged. I sat back on my heels, giving her space. "Who did this to you?" Vila drew a ragged breath, her gaze drifting to the rafters where the ropes still dangled like nooses. "Men of Lord Marrow," she said, each word deliberate. "And one called Falk Wren. They ambushed me on the pass. Thought I knew what was hidden here." She paused, coughing wetly, and I offered more water. She waved it off, continuing in fits. "This cabin belonged to Thomas Heller, a human scribe for Stonevale's court. He found forgeries, land deeds twisted, farms stolen from your kind, hunting grounds from mine, rivers rerouted with false seals. He planned to expose it, take proof to the capital. Vanished, house sealed, left to rot." I leaned forward, piecing it together. "And you? Why you—" Her lip curled, exposing a tusk. "Granddaughter of Rogar, chieftain of White Fang clan. I led escorts through these lands. They thought I carried his secrets or could lure others who did." She shifted, wincing as the blanket pulled against her wounds. "Hung me as bait. Torture and trap in one, a living warning." The pieces clicked. Falk, that sly bastard who'd tried to buy the place back from me in town, offering far more than it was worth. He'd been after more than wood and dirt. "They didn't kill you outright," I said, more question than statement. Vila's laugh was bitter, a low rumble that ended in a grimace. "Dead speak no screams. They wanted me broken, begging, a trophy to parade." Her eye met mine, fierce despite the pain. I didn't break. I nodded, respecting that fire, but practicality kicked in. "If you're right that rider saw me cut you down, they'll come back." I stood pacing the room, my mind racing, leave her ride for town. But the looks at the auction, the pity told me no one there would help. I was in this now, like it or not. Vila watched me, then spoke softly. "If you want to live, leave me. Go before dark." I stopped, turning to her. She meant it no plea, no manipulation, just raw truth. Part of me wanted to grab Bess and ride hard, but I'd seen that rider's eyes. He'd mark me as a witness, same as her. "Can't," I said. "They know I was here, and I didn't cut you down just to let you die alone." Something shifted in her expression, a flicker of surprise, maybe gratitude. She nodded, once accepting. I knelt at the center of the room, tapping the floorboards with my knife hilt. Most rang solid, but one spot echoed hollow. "You said proof's here." Vela's eye sharpened. "Under." He hit it. I pried at the edges, the wood splintering under my blade. A sealed compartment emerged, lined with tar to keep out moisture. Inside, an iron-bound chest and a heavy leather pouch. I flipped the latch on the chest, revealing rolls of parchment wax-sealed deeds and a leather-bound ledger. My fingers traced the pages' names of farmers I'd heard in passing borders, redrawn with forged signatures, payments coded in shorthand. Lands from orc clans like Whitefang marked as confiscated for crown use, then quietly sold to Marrow's allies. The ledger named them all: Lord Darren Marrow, Judge Hewart Sloane, even merchants from Stonevale. This wasn't petty theft. It was a web of corruption spun to devour the weak. I closed the chest, my stomach twisting. 12 coppers had bought me a farm and a death sentence. "This could topple them," I whispered. Vela leaned forward, her voice steady. "Or bury us first." We talked strategy then, her teaching me basics, how to brace a door against a charge, where to aim a blade at armored foes, orc tactics honed by generations of border wars. She was weak still, but her knowledge was a weapon. As night fell, tension coiled in the air like smoke. Falk would return, and we'd be ready or die trying. The sound of hooves echoed through the twilight, faint at first, but growing louder like thunder rolling in from the forest. I froze my hand, tightening on the crossbow I'd loaded earlier. Vela's head snapped up, her good eye alert, despite the exhaustion etched into her features. She pushed herself to a sitting position, gripping the short axe I'd scavenged from the barn. "Them," she growled, her voice low and certain. I crept to the window, peering through a gap in the boards. 3 riders emerged from the tree line, their silhouettes dark against the fading sky. The leader was unmistakable, the gaunt face, the silver-trimmed hat. Falk Wren. He reined in his horse at the fence, his companions fanning out behind him, hands resting on sword hilts. No urgency in their movements, just cold confidence. "Edric Vale." Falk called, his voice carrying like a merchant hawking wares. "New owner of this fine establishment. Word travels fast in Stonevale. I hear congratulations are in order." I didn't open the door. Instead, I spoke through the crack, keeping the crossbow aimed low. "What do you want?" He dismounted smoothly, boots sinking into the soft earth. "Just a neighborly chat. This place, it's got a history. The kind that bites the unwary. I'm here to spare you that. 200 silver coins more than fair. Hand over the deed, the key, and ride out before sunset. You'll thank me later." His tone was polished, but his eyes scanned the cabin lingering on the windows. He knew, or suspected. I felt Vila's presence behind me, her breathing steady, now coiled like a spring. "Generous," I replied, forcing calm. "But why the rush? It's just a rundown shack." Falk chuckled, a dry sound without humor. "Some spots are best left forgotten. Ghosts, you know, bad luck." I leaned into the gap, letting him see my face. Ghosts like the one I found hanging from the rafters. For a split second, his mask slipped a twitch at the corner of his mouth, a hardening in his gaze. He recovered quickly, but I'd seen it. "Stories," he said dismissively. "Tall tales from border folk. But if you found complications, all the more reason to sell. 200 silver buys a fresh start elsewhere." One of his men shifted impatiently, hand drifting toward his blade. I raised the crossbow just enough to make my point. "I'm not selling. This is my land now." Falk's smile faded. "You don't grasp what you're meddling in Vale. This isn't a game for drifters like you." "I grasp enough," I shot back. "Enough to know you're not here for the view." He tilted his head, appraising me like a flawed gem. Then his eyes flicked past me to the interior of the cabin. Vela must have moved into view deliberately, I realized. Falk's expression darkened further. "So the beast lives." Troublesome. Viola stepped forward, her shadow falling across the threshold. Even weakened, she towered, her presence filling the room like a storm cloud. "Come closer, human," she rumbled. "See how troublesome I can be." The riders tensed, but Falk raised a hand, holding them back. He met my gaze again, all pretense gone. "You've chosen poorly, but I'll give you one night to reconsider. Sleep on it if you can." He mounted up, signaling his men. They wheeled their horses and rode off, vanishing into the woods. But as they went, Falk glanced back, his eyes locking on the window where Vela stood. A clear message he knew she was there, and this wasn't over. I barred the door again, my pulse still racing. Vela leaned against the wall, axe in hand, but I saw the effort it took her to stay upright. "He'll return with more," she said matter-of-factly. "I know." I set the crossbow down and started gathering what we had: ropes from the barn, a few loose planks, anything to fortify. We worked in tandem. I nailed boards over the weakest windows, while she directed me on weak points, her Orcish insight spotting vulnerabilities I'd missed. "Brace the door with that beam," she instructed, pointing. "Angle it low, stops a ram charge." As we rigged tripwires around the fence, thin cords tied to bells scavenged from the well bucket, I couldn't shake the surreal twist of it all. 12 coppers. That's what had landed me here, barricading a shack with an orc warrior against who knew how many thugs. My life had been simple caravans, bad deals, endless roads. No ties, no troubles beyond the next meal. Now I was knee-deep in forgery scandals and border feuds. We paused for breath as dusk settled the cabin, now a makeshift fortress. Vela tested her axe swing, gingerly wincing at the pull on her shoulder. "You're still weak," I said, handing her more water. She took at her massive hand, engulfing the cup. "I've been hung upside down in your rafters. Weak is relative." But she sat leaning against the hearth. In the firelight, her features softened slightly, the sharp tusks, the scarred green skin, telling stories of clashes I could only guess at. White Fang isn't weak. My clan holds the northern passes. Marrow's greed stole our grounds, hunting lands my people bled for. He forges papers, calls it law. We've raided back, but proof, that's a weapon sharper than steel. I sat across from her, poking the fire. "Sounds like you've been fighting this longer than today." She nodded, her eye distant. "Since I could hold a blade. Rogar's taught me land isn't dirt, it's blood. Marrow takes it, twists it for silver. My capture, they wanted clan secrets or to break us publicly." She touched the gash on her jaw, fresh anger flaring. I didn't speak. I shared my own scraps, then the words tumbling out in the quiet. "I've no clan, no legacy. Just bad luck. Partner stole my herd last season, left me scraping by. Bought this place thinking it'd be a reset. Quiet life, maybe some livestock." I laughed bitterly. "Quiet's overrated, apparently." Vela regarded me, something like understanding crossing her face. "Humans chase quiet. Orcs chase honor. But both end up in fights like this." She paused, then added softly, "Thank you for cutting me down." I shrugged, uncomfortable with the weight of it. "Couldn't leave you there." A faint smile tugged at her lips, the first I'd seen cracking the warrior mask. Not many humans would say that. We fell into a tentative rhythm, sharing watch shifts as night deepened. She told me more of her clan, fierce riders, bone-carved horns for signals, oaths sworn on tusks. I shared caravan tales, dodging bandits, surviving storms. For the first time in years, the silence between words felt companionable, not empty. The 12 coppers had bought more than land. They'd thrust me into alliance with someone who'd been enemy by default. But as the fire dimmed, a distant jingle cut the air, the tripwire bells. Vela surged to her feet, axe ready. "They're here!" I grabbed my crossbow, heart pounding. The night had just begun. The bells jingled again, sharper this time, cutting through the night like a blade. I bolted upright from my half-doze by the window, crossbow in hand. Viola was already on her feet, axe gripped tightly, her silhouette massive and unyielding in the dim firelight. "How many?" she whispered, peering through a slit in the boards. I counted the shadows moving beyond the fence torches, flaring to life, forming a ragged semicircle around the yard. 10 at least. Mounted. My voice was steady, but my stomach twisted. This wasn't a scouting party. This was an assault. Falk's voice rang out calm and commanding. "Vale, we know you're in there with the beast. Open up and this ends quietly. Resist, and we'll burn it down around you." Viola snarled low in her throat, a sound that raised the hairs on my neck. Quietly, for who your master, I signaled her to hold. We couldn't afford to waste energy on taunts. The tripwires had done their job, giving us warning, but now the real fight began. I aimed through the window slit, loosing a bolt at the nearest torchbearer. It thunked into his shoulder, sending him tumbling from his horse with a yelp. The others scattered, briefly cursing, but Falk barked orders, regrouping them under improvised shields, planks ripped from my own fence. "Light it up!" he shouted. Torches arced through the air like falling stars, slamming into the roof. Dry thatch caught immediately, flames licking greedily upward. Smoke began to seep through the cracks, stinging my eyes. "Water!" I yelled, grabbing a bucket we'd filled earlier and hurling it onto the blaze from the door. It sizzled, dampening one spot, but more torches followed. Viola swung her axe, knocking one mid-flight with the flat of the blade, sending it spinning harmlessly into the grass. But she winced with the effort, her wounds reopening under the strain. "They're circling!" She warned, her breath coming in harsh bursts. "Back wall weak there." I nodded, reloading the crossbow as fast as my shaking hands allowed. Falk was smart. He wasn't charging blindly. His men probed the defenses, feinting at the door while others flanked to the sides. An arrow whistled through a window gap, embedding in the wall inches from my head. I fired back blindly, hearing a grunt of pain from outside. Good, another down. The roof fire spread, crackling louder, heat building inside the cabin. Sweat poured down my face, mixing with soot. "We can't hold forever," I muttered, coughing. My mind raced the chest of documents sat by the hearth, our only leverage. If they burned the place, it was all gone, and us with it. Viola's eye met mine, fierce and unyielding, not without a signal. She reached under her tattered armor, pulling out a small bone tube strung on a leather cord. "This calls my kin." "Do it," I said without hesitation. She put it to her lips and blew a piercing, eerie wail that cut through the chaos, echoing into the night. Once, then again. The sound wasn't loud in volume, but it carried sharp as a hawk's cry. Falk heard it. "Stop her!" he roared. His men surged forward, one ramming the door with a shoulder. The brace held, but wood splintered. I shot through the crack, the bolt grazing his arm and sending him reeling. Vela charged to the door, using her axe to hack at fingers prying at the edges. A scream followed as she connected. But the flames roared higher now, smoke thickening the air. My lungs burned, vision blurred. "We have to get out," I gasped, slinging the document pouch over my shoulder and grabbing the chest. "Door or window?" "Door," Viola decided. "Fight through." We kicked the brace free, the door swinging open into the inferno-lit yard. 2 men rushed us. I dropped one with a bolt to the leg while Vela's axe cleaved the shield of the other, her swing powered by raw fury despite her injuries. She roared in Orcish a battle cry that made the horses rear in panic. Falk circled on horseback, sword drawn. "Fools, the proof burns with you." He revealed more than he intended confirmation that the documents were his true target. His face twisted in the firelight, no longer the smooth negotiator, but a desperate enforcer. An arrow grazed my arm, drawing blood, but adrenaline dulled the pain. We backed toward the barn for cover, Vela shielding me with her bulk as she parried a spear thrust. "Hold!" she grunted. "They come." From the northern hill, a deep horn blast answered her call, low, resonant like thunder in the mountains. Falk's head whipped around. "What?" Torches appeared on the ridge, dozens of them descending like a river of fire. Hooves pounded the earth, shaking the ground. Orc riders burst from the tree line, armored in leather and bone spears glinting. At their head rode an elder orc, silver hair braided back, a wolf pelt cloak billowing. His face was scarred, granite eyes locked on Viola. "Grandfather," she called, her voice breaking with relief. Rogar, it had to be him, leaped from his mount mid-charge, his greatsword sweeping in an arc that felled 2 of Falk's men in one stroke. The White Fang warriors swarmed the yard, their cries a deafening storm. Falk's force shattered. Some fled into the woods, others thrown down weapons in surrender. One tried to torch the cabin further, but an orc arrow pierced his hand, pinning it to his saddle. I joined the fray where I could crossbow, picking off a retreating archer. Vela fought beside Rogar, her axe a blur, despite the blood seeping through her bandages. Falk wheeled his horse, trying to break free, but Rogar's warriors encircled him. A lasso snagged his mount, yanking him to the ground. He scrambled up sword raised, but Rogar disarmed him with a single contemptuous blow. The battle, if you could call the rout that ended as quickly as it began. Falk knelt in the mud, bound and glaring. His surviving men were trussed like game. The cabin fire was doused with buckets passed hand to hand by the orcs, the flames hissing into steam. The roof was charred, one wall blackened, but the structure held. Rogar turned to Vila, his stern face softening as he embraced her carefully. "Child, we feared the worst." His voice was a deep rumble laced with relief. She pulled back, gesturing to me. "Edric saved me, cut me down, fought with me." Rogar's gaze shifted to me, appraising. I stood there, crossbow lowered, feeling small under that scrutiny. "Human," he said not unkindly. "You sheltered a fang. Why?" I wiped soot from my face. "Didn't seem right to leave her hanging." Simple truth, but it felt heavier now with the yard littered in aftermath. He nodded once, then eyed the chest I'd dragged out. "The proof," Vela opened it, handing him the ledger. Rogar's expression darkened as he scanned the pages. Names, forgeries, the theft of his clan's lands laid bare. "This ends Marrow." He closed it with a snap. "But Stonevale's reach is long. We must get this to clean hands." I felt a wave of exhaustion crash over me, mingled with grim satisfaction. The night had nearly killed us, but we'd held. Yet Rogar's words lingered. The war wasn't over. Marrow would strike back if he learned of this. "There's a royal magistrate in Duskbarrow," I said. "Lady Mirian Holt. She's touring the borders. If we get these to her—" Rogar agreed. "Dawn breaks soon. We ride." As the first light crested the trees, painting the smoldering yard in gray hues, I looked at Vila. She met my eyes, a silent acknowledgement passing between us. We'd survived the night, but the road ahead loomed. The 12 coppers had cost more than I'd bargained, but perhaps gained more too. As dawn's first light pierced the smoke-hazed yard, Rogar wasted no time. "The documents must reach clean hands," he declared, his voice like grinding stone. "Marrow's spies infest Stonevale. Duskbarrow lady. Mirian Holt is there, a royal magistrate beyond his bribes." I nodded, slinging the pouch of deeds over my shoulder and clutching the iron chest. Vela mounted a spare horse from her clan's riders, her movements stiff but determined. Rogar clasped her forearm in farewell, then turned to me. "Ride swift, human. White Fang owes you a debt." We set off at a brisk trot, the forest swallowing the smoldering cabin behind us. The path to Duskbarrow cut through dense woods and over rugged hills, a 3-day ride if we pushed hard. My arm throbbed from the arrow graze, and exhaustion tugged at me like wet chains, but adrenaline and the weight of what we carried kept me going. Vila rode beside me, her presence a solid anchor in the uncertainty. She was quieter now, the fire of battle banked, but her eyes scanned the trees constantly, ever the warrior. The first day blurred into a rhythm of hooves and hushed words. We spoke little at first, focused on the trail, but as the sun climbed, conversation flowed. "Why help?" she asked during a brief stop by a stream, her massive frame leaning against a tree while I watered the horses. I splashed water on my face, considering. Started simple, didn't want a corpse in my new home, but now it's bigger. Those papers stole from folks like me too. Drifters, farmers without pull. If Marrow wins, no one's safe. She nodded, tusks catching the light. "Honor binds us. My clan lost valleys to his ink, not swords. Rogar fought wars for less." She paused, her voice softening. "You fight like one of us now." I met her gaze, feeling a strange warmth amid the chill morning. "Never thought I'd ally with orcs. Border tales paint you as monsters." Vela's laugh was rough, genuine. "And humans as thieves. Yet here we are." As we rode on, she shared more stories of White Fang's hunt's oaths, sworn under starlit skies, the pain of watching kin driven from ancestral grounds. I opened up in turn, my wandering years, the betrayal that left me broke the loneliness of roads without end. Thought this land would root me, I admitted. Didn't expect roots tangled in conspiracy. By evening, camped in a hidden glade, the distance between us felt smaller. She tended my wound with orcish herbs from her pouch, her touch careful, despite her strength. Humans heal slow, she teased, but her eye held concern. I felt it then, a spark, not just alliance, but something deeper. Respect, turning to regard shared peril, forging a bond. The second day brought rain, turning paths to mud. We pushed through cloaks sodden, but the weather hid our tracks. Vela's strength returned in waves. She scouted ahead, her orc senses picking up scents I missed. No tales yet, she reported, but tension lingered. We talked of futures, hers, rebuilding clan lands, mine. Uncertain. After this, what? She asked over a meager fire. I poked the embers. Fix the cabin, maybe, if it stands. But inwardly, I wondered alone again. The thought felt hollow now. On the third day, Duskbarrow rose from the mist, a fortified town on the river banners of the crown fluttering from stone walls. We slipped in through the gates, hooded against prying eyes. Lady Mirian Holt's quarters were in the keep. Her guards eyed us warily, a scruffy human and a towering orc, but the royal seal on her summons got us through. She was sharp-featured in her 50s, with a gaze that dissected lies. "State your business," she said, quill poised over parchment. I set the chest on her table, opening it. Proof of forgery in Stonevale, lands stolen by Lord Marrow and his circle. Vela stood silent beside me as Holt examined the deeds, her expression hardening with each page. The ledger sealed it, names, dates, coded bribes. "This reeks of treason," she muttered. By midday, she'd issued warrants. Marrow and Sloane arrested Stonevale's archives, sealed. Writers dispatched immediately. "You've stirred a hornet's nest," she warned. "But the crown thanks you." We rode back lighter. The burden lifted, though danger lingered until arrests were made. The journey reversed our talks deeper, now laced with possibility. Vila's hand brushed mine once, intentional. "You could visit White Fang," she said. "See our valleys." I smiled. "Might take you up on that." Returning to the cabin felt like reclaiming a battlefield. Rogar's warriors had held it. The yard cleared of debris, the roof patched with fresh thatch. Falk and his captured men were gone, handed to Holt's envoys en route. The clan had even reinforced the fence, their bone carvings warding the gate. Rogar greeted us, clasping my arm like kin. The paper struck true, Marrow's in chains. He eyed me appraisingly. "White Fang offers Alliance Edric Vale. Our fires are yours." I accepted, humbled. The orcs departed soon after, but Vela lingered, helping me scrub bloodstains from the floor, her strength making light work of heavy beams. "This place suits you," she said one evening, as we sat on the repaired porch watching the sun dip behind Blackthorn. "It does now." I turned to her, the spark from the road kindling brighter. She was no longer the broken figure from the rafters, whole, fierce, yet with a gentleness I'd glimpsed in quiet moments. Our hands met, her green skin warm against mine. No words needed. The bond was there, forged in fire and choice. Standing at the gate later, I surveyed the land grass trimmed, well-cleared barn standing firm. 12 coppers. That pittance had bought secrets that toppled lords, a fight that saved clans, and a future intertwined with Vila's. From drifter to defender, loneliness, to alliance, perhaps love. Cheap things I'd learned could change everything. And in this border world of humans and orcs, maybe it heralded peace, one hard-won deed at a time.